Hello to the good people and to the bad. Bad people need love too.
When it comes to positivity, we all need it.
Write about people whose names are familiar to us now, like Isaiah Thomas.
Those things always work when it comes to putting out your best self.
God has blessed you with a beautiful voice, Chris. Thank you very much for doing this.
Hello to the good people and to the bad people, friends and enemies. And a hearty boom shakalaka to all of you out there. I am Chris Bass. And this is CBI, Chris Bass Interviews. We congregate every Wednesday. That's at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. on the West Coast. Always wanting you to be well where you are. After we rephrase that, we pop up when we can. We used to be on every Wednesday, but, circumstances hit. And some guests can't make it. So I figured, okay, I'm not going to waste my time getting on and pontificate on the stuff that, you can see me on Saturday morning doing that. So whenever the guests get a chance to come through, we let them come through and do their thing. Speaking of a good guest, I've been admiring this person's work for a while. She's a fellow host and interviewer. So I figured, look, why not interview the interviewer and see what happens? She is a great editor, podcaster, live streamer, and writer. She also penned the novel Wicker Park Wishes, and once again, a fellow interviewer and radio person, and I like her work. Please welcome to CBI, Margaret Larkin. How you doing, Margaret?
I'm good. I was just uploading I was just updating my website, and then you're doing the intro. I'm like, shoot, I haven't finished, but whatever, it's okay.
Oh, okay.
I'm uploading some audio stories that I did. So.
Cool, absolutely. Well, thank you for being here. And the one thing I caught, and it was like tongue in cheek, when you were promoting yourself being on the program, you kept saying, I'm nervous, I'm nervous, I'm nervous. And so I've always been interested because most people that I run into who are hosts and interviewers don't like the other side of the mic. I remember the late, great Larry King talked about that.
Ooh.
He said that I'd rather be on this side of the mic than being a guest. So how do you feel about being a guest?
It's great, and I've only done it. I think you're the only other. I mean, I've been on broadcast radio, like I've been on WGN radio being interviewed, but I've never. No, I think you're the only second person who's ever asked me to do a live stream interview, and I do like being interviewed. And sometimes I see these things about women, like, oh, this woman's achieved this woman's achieved this. I'm like, what about me? I mean, I've done some stuff, but I'm just not very public about it, And actually, by the way, you mentioned Larry King, and I did meet him in LA one time. He used to have this place. I don't know if it's still there. It was a bagel place. Mm-hmm. Very good bagels in Beverly Hills, and he was there at his place, and he was sitting with some other people, and I walked up to him and I said, "Hi, I have a podcast. Here's my card. I was wondering if I can interview you." And then he pointed to like his scheduler assistant, whatever. He's like, "Why don't you just contact her?" And he wrote down her number. And of course, I didn't get the interview, but he was very friendly. I'm really glad he gave me attention because I just basically walked up to his table and asked him that.
That's pretty cool. When you meet someone like Larry King, who's like, the godfather of interviews, of course, coming from radio and coming from the Florida area, man, this guy got a chance to interview Frank Sinatra back in the day. Through Frank Sinatra told a story. I'm not telling the story, the whole thing, but the reason why he got the interview was because Jackie Gleason did Frank Sinatra a solid back in the day, and he owed him a favor, and the favor was, hey, be on a guest for Larry King.
That's nice. Yeah, Larry. I mean, I thought it was really cool that Larry King didn't snub me at that point. Be like, who are you? You're not some rich person. I was just like some Joe Schmo type.
That's cool. So, Margaret, where do you come from? Where does Margaret Larkin come from? Your background?
Okay, I come from. Well, it's Evanston, but people call it Skevinston. And because it's on the border of Evanston and Skokie. So, people will be out in their head like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. So basically, we went to Evanston schools, District 65 schools. We went to Evanston High School, but we had Skokie police. But I was bused to like the other side of Evanston to a school for junior high, to a school that really only did have Evanston people. So I lived in this really weird zip code. But then after that, my parents moved to downtown Evanston, and I helped them for several years when they were older. So I was in Evanston, Evanston proper.
So what was that life like in Evanston, being Evanston proper?
Oh, Evanston proper. Okay. Evanston's really great. I mean, I know I sound like a homer, but
That's cool.
It's well, this is what Rafer Weigel and I were talking about because he and I went to the same high school a year apart. I still don't know who his friends were, but he's the last person I interviewed he and I did this incredible interview. So it's very special. You don't really realize until you leave because you have a lot of different kinds of people together, and then you have the culture trying to make sure that it all works. I mean, different ethnicities and so forth. And there are things I learned growing up that I thought the entire nation was learning. And then I realized, wait, no, a lot of people are not learning actually this stuff. And history is sort of what people are learning about history in other places is sort of different. So it's sort of like when I was growing up, they were very committed to teaching people about different kinds of people in our country. And then you also went to school with different kinds of people. And I didn't really realize that things are very segregated. I mean, I hate to say that, but it wasn't until I left school, I went to college. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would meet people who've never met anybody who's even Jewish. I mean, anybody has dark skin or anything. And the perceptions of people were very strange. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky because we did learn. And the people were in our classes. A lot of our teachers were from different backgrounds. So a lot of the music we were exposed to, like that's what Rafer and I were talking about. We were exposed to all different kinds of music and it made us sort of spoiled culturally. So, and then you go out there and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so I remember after I left, I came back, I talked to my guidance counselor and he just like nodded, yeah, okay. So it's not like fake. It's not like fake politically correct. That's the thing is that my parents also, they were the real deal. Like they wanted us to have, be exposed to different things. And my dad was a teacher. So it wasn't just lip service. And they weren't patting themselves in the back. They were just living life, so that's how you grow up. Like to me, that's what Evanston is.
Now you said before your friend Rafer again?
Well, Rafer Weigel, I interviewed him for the podcast, for the Illinois News Broadcasters Association podcast.
I know his sister Jennifer. We used to work back at WLS together. Of course, their dad, Tim Weigel, was a great sportscaster, man. I mean, back at LS as well, LS Television. And so coming from that type of family, you have to figure, that's, sometimes you walk away from it, sometimes you don't. But it just I know his sister, just great, salt of the earth. And just fantastic. So just, you said before about Rafer, so I remember that name, so it started to come back to mind. So being in an environment and growing up there, so high school, you went to high school, where'd you go to college at?
It's called Mount Holyoke College. It's a women's college in Massachusetts because I wanted to go out east because it was so different. And my dad and my sister went to grad school out east. They went to like Ivy League schools for grad school. And then I had family members out there. And I just had this other branch of the family that went to good schools. And I thought, I want to experience that. But I ended up going to, this women's college. And that was a very good experience because that's another thing that happened is that when you go to, I'm sure it's similar today, but when you go to a women's college, you discuss so much stuff that you come out of there like, okay, this is who I am. You learn about feminism, all that kind of stuff. So I didn't have to go around for the rest of my life and say, I support women, or I think this. It's like, of course you do. I mean, all these women will like get into, sometimes they'll say these kinds of feminist ideas. And I'm thinking, yeah, we explored a lot of that stuff. So that was a good thing about going there. But yeah, and then I double majored in American Studies and English.
So doubling in those majors and going to college for all women and you leave and graduate.
Yeah.
What led you into radio?
Well, that was several years later. So this is what's interesting because I didn't get into radio until my late 30s. And so I love radio. I mean, I still love it. I only do like a little right now in radio, but I love radio. I grew up with radio. I grew up with, this is what I've been talking about with other people is, before the internet and stuff, we used to get imports. I don't know how old you are, but I don't know if you remember this, but a lot of music broke on college radio stations, or you went to a record store, or you might have been lucky to have friends with certain kinds of music. So, I was really into radio, like discovering music through radio. And then but also I grew up on classical music. I used to go to concerts, and opera with my parents and so forth. So I listened to classical music. Then my parents were older. So I used to listen to old time radio, that old time radio show that's still on DCB.
WBBM.
Oh, BBM is 1 hour, but used to be 97.1 used to have Chuck Shaden's radio show.
Oh, those were the days.
Those were the days. And
Yeah.
now it's on the DuPage
Right, correct.
station.
Mm.
So I grew up listening to that, and I used to my parents were from that generation, so I would play it and they'd say, "Oh yeah, I remember this," and they would just tell me what it was like. I just love radio, like the personal aspect of it. But I didn't get into it until much later because it's actually, I think it's Rick Hogan who, okay, first of all, Rick Hogan is one of the most incredible people ever.
Yes. Yes.
And
I agree.
I met him at he was like signing some book or something. I don't know. I bought some book for my mom and he signed it. And I listened to his show like all the time.
On WGN.
In WGN. And so he invited me to the show to talk about something. Oh, he gave me this book that somebody else wrote and he said, just come on the show and talk about it. And I went there and I thought, oh my gosh, I'd love to work in radio. And then I got an internship somewhere and then I just started doing all these different things. So I still love radio.
No, you sound like me. It's like a kindred spirit because like you, I like music. See, when I was back at Columbia College Chicago, I was on WCRX, the college radio station. You're right. A lot of music broke through college. And so, for example, CBS had the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And a lot of those people that were on stage, I remember cutting their first record on the radio as a disc jockey. So all these memories started to flow out. And you mentioned about classical music. My mom and dad sometimes put classical music on in the house, or I would go listen to it. Rachmaninoff is still one of my favorite artists of all time. So that type of going from one to another, as long as it's good to you, it's good music.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about old time music, old time radio, the days that you had radio shows on like The Shadow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What drew you to old time radio, and what were some of your favorites listening to it? Because I love it. I think it's some of the best radio ever done.
Yeah, it's good, right? Well, what's interesting now about podcasting is now they are doing scripted.
Right.
So I tell people this is what they did 100 years ago.
Right.
You know? Okay. What happened was my parents always listened. There used to be two. Well, first of all, let's go back to the hip hop thing.
Sure.
Because you mentioned hip hop. You're from Chicago. I'm from Chicago. It was not called hip hop back then. It was called rap. You know, and remember how it used to be regional?
Yes, it was. Yeah. Very territorial.
Right. And then yesterday, I met this guy in my building. He works in the music business, but he's from the West Coast. And so I was saying, well, hip hop used to be like regional and it wasn't called that. And now it's all together. Everybody calls it hip hop. Okay. But anyway, okay. So the old time thing. Okay. So there were two classical music stations. One of them became, obviously, you probably know the Drive, 97.1. And then there was WFMT, which is still around. And so my parents, especially my dad, he was always listening to that stuff. Yes. And so, of course, the old time radio show would come in on Saturday and I would just listen for like 3 hours. And especially because my parents were from that generation. So they would share their memories. And as a child, I just thought it was very interesting because they were creating this whole world through stories.
Yes.
So I did consistently. And I also, today, even now, I teach on Saturdays. I teach immigrants on the South Side. So the traffic is really bad when I come back on Saturdays. So I still listen to that show. On my way home, and it's really great.
It definitely piques the imagination when you're able to listen to all these sounds and voices and sound effects, and you create all these images in your mind. And like you said, back in the day, like your parents and my parents in particular, they will sit in front of the radio, and that was the entertainment you got, and all those wonderful sounds came out, and your imagination ran wild. So to have an eclectic viewpoint of music, classical music, hip hop, rap, going into old time radio, that to me shows a different range of how you love radio. I mean, you got a good variety there.
Yeah, and also that's the thing about that's what's cool about the music discovery many years ago before the internet, because you had to be open, and then you had to find, and then so of course if you grew up in the Chicagoland area, I mean, we were so spoiled because first of all, we grew up in a free country where culture wasn't limited. And second of all, we grew up in a place where there are different kinds of people. So you could find your music. And like I said, you could go to a vinyl record store and they could recommend something to you that, like, I got some really obscure African stuff and Asian stuff. And because the guy would be like, oh, you probably like this, you probably like this. However, I think the modern version of what I'm experiencing is definitely Twitch. Like I have discovered so much good music, obscure stuff on Twitch. And there are these, I especially, I follow these DJs from Europe. It's usually Europe and Canada. And then there's some people from New Zealand and so forth, because I like techno. And although the other day, yesterday I discovered this guy who's from Louisville of all places, and he plays incredibly interesting techno with, a house vibe, like a house sensibility. So now I'm discovering more stuff, and it's really exciting. So
It is. And that's the great thing about it when you have all these different areas to get new sound and to get new music. It's still fun. It's still fun. Despite oversaturation, what I think has become, at least get a chance to pick and choose your battles, quote unquote, and you're able to find something you like and just go through a poll. But let's go real quick to the comment section, what I call the peanut gallery here. Good afternoon, Barbara Jeans. Wednesday afternoon greetings. How you doing? How you doing, Walter? He screams out Margaret, Margaret, Margaret. So I hope he's a fan.
Walter? Okay, hey, what's up? Wait, do I know him? Okay.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Now, so you mentioned about getting an internship at a radio station. So what was the first radio station you worked at?
Oh my gosh, what is it? Oh, WIND. I mean, well, it wasn't the old school WIND. It's a modern one owned by Salem. And I just went in there and I had this interview, and luckily they weren't hiring just school age people. And then I started out in promotions, and I learned some other stuff. And then eventually I was always working part-time in it because my parents, well, to tell you the truth, my parents are older and I was helping them for several years. So I was going to Evanston constantly because I live in the city. And so I had to leave things part-time, and I just loved it. Like I just knew when I got in, and I just thought, oh my gosh, I want to be I want to work on a talk show. I was just a complete nerd. Like I knew so much about radio. I analyzed it. I mean, such a nerd, but I still feel that way. It's just more like now it's brought into Twitch. So
well, that's righteous. Now, when you're at WIND and you're listening and you're being a part of it and you're soaking it all in, how did that environment prepare you for your next step? I mean, so going from one radio station to another radio station, the bridge. So what was your next radio station after WIND?
Well, see, okay, WIND was also in the same space as WYLL, which is a Christian station. It's owned by the same company.
Right.
So then I applied to, well, I mean, first I just learned technical stuff because I worked on my own. Like, I mean, what happened was I wanted to learn certain things, and of course nobody would teach me because that's how it is. So then I just sat there and learned stuff. And then I applied to the internship at WGN Radio. And then that was for the morning show. I didn't get it at first. And then I applied again, and then I got it. And then I worked, in the morning show with it was Spike O'Dell, and then the morning producer was what's his name? Jim Weiser. I learned a lot. Spike O'Dell is a class act.
Yes, he is.
And same with Jim. Jim was really great. He gave me he's very encouraging, very, very encouraging. So I was working at both stations. So I was interning at one, and then I was working at IND. I was like splitting. And then, and then I went back to IND. I worked on so after the internship was done, they said, "Oh, we want you to do it more." I'm like, "Well, then pay me something." And they're like, "Oh no, we can't." I'm like, "Come on, these people are making millions of dollars, whatever." So then I went back to IND and I worked on a show, and then I left, and then okay, because the thing is, like, people probably know this, but let's just say radio's not the smoothest situation to work in.
Preach.
Unless you have like an agent or something. I mean, unless you're like, there's a small percentage of people I think have a sweet deal, and they have like their path is smoother. But if you're trying to make it, it's very rough. However, it makes you stronger. So like, of course, when you're going through it, it's very rough. Cause like I just went through a bad experience. It's very rough. But then in hindsight, you think, no, I'm way sharper. I'm more savvy. I know what my boundaries are. So early on, I didn't really understand that. And now I do.
You're right, Margaret. It does make you strong. I mean, once again, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about my own life that I had in terrestrial radio. I didn't have an agent. Like anything else outside of the agent, the programmer really has to believe in your work, because he or she can make mountains move for you and then get you in a position for you to succeed. as long as somebody behind you that's going to be supportive and
Right.
has the juice to make you better,
Mhm.
that's one thing. When you're out there on your own, it's a whole different conversation. And sometimes, like you said before, you're by yourself. Sometimes you learn things on your own. I worked overnight, so there was nobody around
Mhm.
when I was doing my thing, except when the morning crew came in around 3 o'clock in the morning. But it's the fact that that time you're able to think, you're able to process, you're able to try to navigate where you are in radio. And as we know, if you have someone that's like, say, Jim Weiser, who was very encouraging, for me, that was kind of rare to
Yeah.
find someone that was encouraging that wanted to help, because everybody else wanted to come for your job or get you fired or come for your neck and just be, extreme like viperism.
Yeah. Yes, that is true. I mean, Jim Weiser, well, I think it's because he had a good job and he's just a good person. I mean,
Yes.
I still linked with him on LinkedIn, but well, it's not just that he was encouraging because he wasn't fake. It was more like, okay, first of all, he was hard to work with because he had standards, but also I talked to him about certain things and he's like, oh, it sounds like you're working in a boys club. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like there are just certain things I just wasn't aware of because
Mhm.
okay, a lot of people say this. I think, it's a different experience if you're a woman. Now, I'm not saying it's easier for guys. It's just like there's a different experience. And I've tried to tell people about it. And some people believe me and some people don't. Okay. But
Mhm.
the point is, I know what I experienced. So they're
Right.
like, let's just say that. Okay, so I don't look my age. Okay, so already people think I'm young, but I'm serious. Well, just because I'm not a young idiot. So then I
Correct.
think people would take my seriousness and they think I was some kind of buzzkill or something. I don't know, or like they think I was too nerdy or too intense. But it's like, but I've already been through all the idiot kind of stuff. So that's another thing. And also, there's also the challenges of let's just say certain people get ahead and it's not exactly the most kosher situation. And of course, because I know a lot of people, I know the stories, but of course I won't repeat it. But
Mhm.
it can be sort of challenging. However, the other side of it is you learn a lot about yourself. You learn what you'll accept. It makes the rest of life very easy when you go through
Yes.
that. And like now, I don't have time to put up with stuff. Like, I went through some drama, and so I contacted somebody who used to work in TV, and I said, he's like, "What happened?" I said, "Oh, it's just typical radio stuff." Like,
Mm.
I'm not even. But see, the thing is, I won't tolerate the typical radio stuff anymore.
There you go.
So, and I want to segue into recommending an excellent book. I've only convinced one person to read it. It's called The Asshole Survival Guide, the A-Hole Survival Guide, but he has a full word. Every single person should read that book. And I told my friend about it from Evanston. And I said, dude, you got to read this book. And he said, let's go to the library right now. And he took it out and then he texted me. He said, I wish that I read this years ago. But if you read that book, you will know how far you'll allow people to treat you badly.
You know what, Margaret? We can finish the show. Do me a favor in Messenger. Let me know about that book,
Okay.
and I can remember it, because it's funny you say that. Again, when I was back at Columbia, one of my instructors was the great Terry Hemritt from
Oh, yeah.
WXRT.
It's very nice. Yeah.
Very nice lady, very nice woman, very approachable. And we took her class was called Profile with Disc Jockey. And this was like back in 1988 in the spring. Took the class. Your final was the interview of Chicago disc jockey. I interviewed Kevin Matthews at the time. He first got to the market. He was like fresh and brand new. I was a Kev head from day one and have been a fan ever since. So I called him up. I talked to him, his producer Shemp. I talked to him and I got a chance to interview him. Also did he was on Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. In the midday slot. He also did at the time 10 a.m. on Saturday mornings. So I got there at let's say I got there was at 9 o'clock in the morning. Interviewed him. I swear, I said, "What's the first advice you would give somebody getting into radio?" He said, "Chris, a lot of assholes in this business." So we come around full circle. So just because you said that about the book with assholes in it, I got to get it. I just have to get it.
But I don't know why there are, because I mean, especially with some jobs, not much is going to happen. And
Yeah.
so why are people so destructive? I have no idea. But it's not like it's all like that. It's just sort
Yeah.
of like you have to navigate it. Then you have to know yourself. And you know what? People have, because I've talked to a lot of people off the record, and people have experienced a lot, and they've experienced a lot of abuse. And if they read that book, they won't experience it again. And you know what? There's never been a reckoning, I don't think, in the radio business. Like, you know how Hollywood went through that thing with the Me Too and all that kind of stuff?
Yes. Mhm.
I don't like, yes, we hear about the stories here and there, but I don't know if there's been the same level in radio. And I think there's some pushback, but I think that okay, this, like, what's really puzzling is if you can be a really good person. Okay, I'll give you an example, but I won't name the person. So let's say,
Sure.
okay, one time I was talking to somebody. Okay, I promoted this person. I was positive to this person. I never did anything to this person negatively. And the person and I talked about certain things that were personal. And I thought, oh, that's a good, well, we bonded. Well, then fast forward and the person saw a friend of mine at some function we were all at. And that person was like speaking smack about me, like telling my friend that basically I messed up or whatever. And I'm thinking, wait,
Come on, man.
I never did anything to this person. So, and I thought, and also we were sharing like some private stuff. And I thought,
Yes.
why do that? That's like, there's something sort of dysfunctional about that. So, but now I won't, like I said, I won't tolerate that. 3 strikes, I'm out. I mean, I'm not gonna, I won't suffer fools anymore because
Yeah.
if I love radio, I don't care what people, I don't care how people perceive me and stuff. I love it. I love live streaming, stuff like that. And
Mhm.
if you're just going to work against me, I'm not going to talk to you. I mean, and
Very
I'm not going to
simple.
waste my time. So
You're preaching to the choir, Margaret. Preaching to the choir. I'm telling you. Let's see. What's up, Jeb? My man out in the West Coast says a surviving a-holes. Got it. We'll read ASAP. Yes.
yeah, it's called the Asshole Survival Guide. It's by a professor at Stanford. So this is another good thing about the book. See, I've never even met this guy. Well, I would love to meet him, but he's a professor at Stanford. So the book is not just like some guy like, hey, I'm an expert. Okay, I'm gonna write this book so I can sell and make a lot of money. No, he's done research and he's done a lot of management research, and he wrote this book because he got so many emails about it. His name is Robert Sutton, Sutton. And it will change your life. I read it twice, and I swear, if this guy were at University of Chicago, I would have already like tried to knock on his door.
Oh,
But
man, that's
yeah,
wonderful. That's great. Thank you for
yeah,
sharing that information. So, what got to your mind, what entered your mind from going from one side of the glass to the other? Meaning, you're on one side of the glass producing or running the board or do things like
yeah.
that to get to the microphone. What was the process for that for you, Margaret?
Okay, well, what happened was, as a WGN. Okay, so this is another thing. This is advice I tell people is that things can seem really bad, but you can find your way. Okay, so this is what happened. So
Mhm.
as Tribune was taken over by some people who were they did certain, like, you got Randy Michaels. I have nothing. Actually, I met him. I have nothing against the guy. I thought he was like he was actually encouraging too, because I asked him about certain things. And
And who was this again?
Randy Michaels, he's
Randy
infamous.
Michaels, right?
Yeah. So I met him, and because he was running, and he was he went to this station when I was there working on some show, and
Mm.
he was really, I don't know, he was encouraging actually. But so what happened was they took over, Tribune Company and WGN, so things were like really strange. But the good thing about it, I was just a freelancer. I was doing commercials and stuff.
Mm.
And I was filling in for producers and stuff. But what happened, what was very interesting, is they opened up the Tribune building. So like it used to be like very segmented, and like you couldn't go here and you couldn't, and all of a sudden you could just, with your pass, you could go everywhere. So I'd go
Oh, okay.
everywhere. And another thing that happened is I wasn't getting a break. So what happened was Kevin Matheny, who's passed away. Kevin Matheny, he's an infamous program director because he used to be Howard Stern's program director. So he was running the place.
Right.
And let's just say that I did not get a break. Okay, I can sort of guess why. I met the guy. I mean, let's just say he's one of these old school people. That's all I'll say. I didn't look the part. Okay, that's my perception of it. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get a break. Because like people have this perception that we were friends. I'm like, no, I wasn't friends with the guy. So then what happened? I was complaining to somebody. And somebody said, okay, there are 2 people who told me something. One was this guy who's been in radio for many years. He works behind the scenes, but he used to be on the air. And I said to him, well, I'd really like to interview people. And he said, why don't you just get a recorder and start interviewing people? I'm like, yeah, you're right. He's like, why wait? That is very inspiring. And then there's this other guy who said to me, why don't you just start a podcast? I'm like, I don't even know how to do it. Because this is back in 2008.
Yes.
2008. That's 15 years ago. And I was like, I don't know how to do it. And so, so those 2 people said, well, you can't, if you can't do it, just do what you want. Who cares if somebody gives you a break? So then luckily, because WGN and Tribune had this really open atmosphere, I was just like go in there and just like learn all this stuff, and I'd interview
Mhm.
people. Sometimes I brought people to the studio at WGN. And I remember one time Matheny was coming out. He's like, "Hey, you working?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I'm working on my own thing," but it's just basically reminded me of I live near River North, and there are these art throughout history. There have been art galleries.
Yes.
And in the back is usually a space, or historically, there's been a space where artists are able to work on their own stuff,
Mhm.
like some back room. And that's essentially the opportunity I got at WGN, because I thought, okay, I'm not going to get a break,
Right.
but there's this back room, so to speak, open, and I'm just going to like learn podcasting and do all this different stuff and experiment. And then once I did it, I thought, gosh, I love doing this. It's just that there wasn't a lot of
Nice.
information. So I had to like, it was a big learning curve for me. And once I did, I thought, gosh, I love doing this. I love interviewing people. And yeah, it's nice when I can get paid for it, but I still love doing it. So that's how I got into it. And then it just made me see it made me see a different, more depth of the experience. But now I like live streaming because I love doing stuff live. It's very exciting.
I always work live. I mean, I rarely work pre-recorded, and I'm an old head. I mean, I got into it, when I was in college and went professional from there. And so for me, being in the moment is how you do it.
Yeah.
I know I used to work with a lot of people who, at one point, they would kind of like I would say probably over prepare to the point where their speech was like scripted
Yeah.
because they was about you kidding around about being nervous. They were actually nervous. I mean, it get to the point I would work with this one guy. I'm like, why are you writing everything you're saying? Write some bullet points, then I'll go from there. No, man, just like I gotta make sure it's tight. So again,
Yeah.
it's like working from a script, and being in the moment is like being in the moment. So that's how you operate. I mean, I that's how I feel, and I think like yourself and others, that's the comfort space that we have when we do it. So, what was it about interviewing people? And like you said before, you're doing your podcast and you're
Yeah.
going to streaming and learning on the fly. What is it about being on this side of the microphone and interviewing people that really attracted you?
Okay, because I like people. Okay, I honestly like people. Okay, I can go outside right here. I live downtown and I can have a conversation. I seriously want to know about everybody I meet. And this is what I noticed about journalism, because until recently I was doing interviews with people for journalism, but there are people that keep saying like, I like the story. I like doing stories. I like doing stories. But I literally like talking to people. So even if I would do a story about some like seemingly minor thing, I would talk to them about different things. But because especially with adults, people have so much experience that we can learn from, and it doesn't
Mhm.
matter, they don't have to be rich or famous or whatever, because a lot of the people's experiences do not bubble up for the rest of the culture to see.
True.
And we could actually, I think, if more people talk to people, we would have more peace in the world. And I'm not joking. It's like, because I teach English to immigrants, so then I find out about their stories. But even like if you talk to people in Chicago, like you and I both live in the city, if you talk to somebody, be like, "Oh, what was it like in 1961?" or whatever, they'll tell you stuff, but you won't see some kind of news report about it, or you won't see some kind of YouTube video about it.
Mhm.
And so that's the thing that really drives me, is I really like to talk to people. Now, of course, for my podcast though, it's media oriented, so the people have to be linked in that way.
Mhm.
Also, I just feel like I become richer in terms of, as a human being, it just helps me to understand, and it makes me more curious. So that's the number one thing.
Go back out to the peanut gallery. Jed
Okay.
also typed, the audience can tell when it is overproduced. Great view on live stream, and in the moment.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I didn't do live streaming before is because, first, I was scared, but also another thing is I didn't really, the technology wasn't really there. And I remember when I started podcasting, also the technology wasn't there. So I had to
Right.
do like a lot of, I always say MacGyver it,
Yeah.
because I
Jerry
had
rig
to
and stuff like that.
piecemeal. Yeah, but now it's easier. So now when I do it through Restream, but now when I saw it was much easier to do, I started live streaming last year. So.
How many guests have you say you interviewed in time?
Like over 200, because I just posted at my regular radio podcast. I think I just posted maybe 195. I don't remember.
Mhm.
And let's see, hold on a second. And then also I've also done over 50 for the Illinois News Broadcasters Association. Yeah, I just posted 195 at my podcast. And then
That's cool.
also, I've
Congratulations.
interviewed people for news. So, like at WBBM, I interviewed people behind the scenes. I wasn't on the air, so I would do interviews with for stories, and I'd cut up the audio and stuff. And then at WGN, I did the same thing. But then my voice was allowed to be on, so I did interviews there. You can see some of them on my website, margaretlarkin.com. Yes,
What
I'd
go-
say over 200. Yeah.
What goes into the preparation? So you as the interviewer, you're about to interview a guest. What does a Margaret Larkin do to prepare for the guest to make sure that it's going to be as smooth as possible?
Well, I always find something that like I definitely want to know something about. There's usually something that is notable about the person, so I make sure I cover that in some way. But yeah, I looked at the stuff online. I may look at like their reels if they're a media person. I might read their articles, things like that. I do the research and I do my list of questions, but I don't go to, and then as the person's talking, I'll either write down a question, a follow-up question, or I'll think about it. And also, I want to make sure they're not a jerk. Like once somebody did recommend somebody, but I thought I don't really want to talk to that person because it seems like their road was easy because they had the right connections. It wasn't like they came up a hard way. And also some
Right.
people I haven't interviewed because they're just not simpatica or they're just not simpatico or simpatico. So usually I try to interview, like people who are well, I'm trying to make sure the person's able to speak and
Yes.
who's gracious in some way.
Have you ever had an interview where you're talking to the guest and it just goes left and they're not speaking? They're speaking
yes,
in like
of
a couple of minutes or something, not a couple of minutes, like a couple of seconds, and it's like you got to pull eye teeth. It's like pulling teeth, no Novocaine. Have you gone through that? And what was that like? What was that type of feeling like? As
Yeah, I interviewed somebody because somebody kept saying interview so-and-so, interview so-and-so, interview so-and-so. And I thought, okay, because they were sort of alarmed that I didn't interview somebody. And this was not live. This is recorded.
Okay.
It was like one of the worst interviews I've ever done. I could not it's very hard to capture a coherent statement. So it was like a 45-minute interview. I edited down to 16 minutes. I don't know what we would have done if it was live, but I just like ask the question, re-ask the question. But I think if it's live, there's extra pressure there that people have to talk, or I might fill the gap. But I think with live stream, I haven't really encountered those kinds of people. But yes, definitely with podcasting, or I think that there's more than there actually is because they're smiling and stuff. And then and then later on, I listen to the audio. I'm like, gosh, there's really not much here. I have to work with it. But most people I've interviewed have been very good.
And look, we've all gone through that. I mean, it's like it is the worst feeling in the world when you're the host and the guest is just like, oh well, so what's your it's like well, what's your charity about? Well, we give back to the community.
Right. That's like
and that's it. I mean, you can't elaborate. I mean, you're a part of the function. You're the guy that created the whole thing. So no, that hurts my soul, man. Especially when, like you said before, I love people too, but it's just that you're there for a reason. You're there to talk. Now, someone told you your ass don't talk, then don't come here. Don't show up. Go back and scratch your ass somewhere. You have to come here and just give like one word sentences and stuff like that. I mean, it just, I don't know, it's a complete waste of time. I just think that.
Why just do follow-up questions if they don't say much?
God, it hurts my soul. And it's like, you try to do what's right. Like you said, people recommend, basically they have this guest on, blah, blah, and everything. And they turn out to be like, Jell-O pudding. No offense to Cosby back in the day and now, but still, it's just, it hurts your soul. So I don't know. It's like that type of thing really, I think is the mark of a good interviewer. You or me or anybody else to be trying to go to that. So like I said, yours was pre-recorded. You got a chance to will it down to 16 minutes or 45. But when you're live in the moment, then I think the skill set really comes out. And so, like I said before, I appreciate what you do. The one thing I've seen a couple of your videos before.
Wait, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say that that's why you have your bullet list. Because let's say the person doesn't say much, then you'll say, so tell me about Peoria, where you're from or whatever.
Right.
And then you go down that route.
You do. And hopefully God and the radio guys listening will help you out through it.
Yeah.
Because you definitely need some sort of salvation during that point. And the one thing
another thing is that a lot of people just don't talk anymore. I mean, have you noticed that? Like a lot of people do not know how to converse.
No, they don't.
And then they think you're some kind of narc or something. I'm like, no, I'm actually a human being. Are you from a small town? No, I'm not from a small town. But yeah, so I think that's also a lost something in our culture. I don't think people really know how to talk.
That's a good point, Margaret. It's like the lost art of conversation, really.
Yeah, like it's hard to just hang out with people and just talk. Like I used to talk with my parents. They used to go on like about all this different stuff, and because they took the time. But a lot of people, they're on technology and stuff, and then when they actually I've met some people. Like I met some people online, and then I met them offline. I'm like, oh my gosh, this person is not socially fluent or something. So okay, sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, you're not. No, that's all right. No, I think you're onto something when it comes to the non-talkers.
Yeah.
And really, because it's more so than before, probably because of technology, probably because of the era we're living in. And I think certain people, when they tap into social media, they let them do their talking for them, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And you kind of like devoid of brain cells and you just give it all this excess energy to social media and everything else.
Well, then also like they're creating a veneer, because somebody, it's like, it's like sometimes I want to really talk to somebody and it's like I'm cracking through their veneer and they're freaked out by it. It's like, okay, that's what I'm saying about skipping. Like skip a song. Okay, just skip because I don't have time to try to crack through your veneer. Either you're going to be on the level or not,
Exactly. My guest right there is Margaret Larkin. You want to comment through the peanut gallery there, the comment section, you could type in your comments or question, or if you are so bold as to call in at 312-597-2106. Again, the number is 312-597-2106. The one thing I like about your style is that, and most of us do this throughout what we do, is to make the guests feel comfortable. And so when you make the guests feel comfortable, they laid back, they want to give information, or they say something like, I never told anybody about that before. When you're in that zone, that's the sweet spot.
Right. But you have to also respect them, because I always say to people, don't worry, I'm not going to talk about your private life. So let's say somebody says, because people have said this, oh, my daughter, I'm not going there. Like if they just mention, they're like, oh, I was flying a kite with my daughter. Oh, I don't go down the daughter route because I'm not touching their private life unless they bring it up. Because like some people will be like, oh, your daughter, is she in junior high? Oh, do you like being a dad? Like, I don't know if they want to talk about this stuff. So I always say to them, this is nerdy. I'm just gonna keep it professional. Now with Rafer Weigel, which was a blockbuster, that was 2 hours. I said to him, don't worry, I'm not, because he had some really, if you look him up, he's had some controversial things happen in his private life that became public. And I said, don't worry, we're not going to talk about your private life. He's like, no, I don't mind talking. Now he didn't talk about what happened, but he talked about the mental, the effects of what happened. And I had no idea he was going to go there. And that was very generous to do. It was
very, and once again, when you sit in the host position and the guest is beyond giving, that takes a whole new different realm of the program, because like you said, he didn't have to share all that.
No.
But he did, because obviously knowing you, and I think just once again, relationship we talked about earlier in the conversation, Margaret, in the both, I think he knew he was in good hands. He knew that you're not going to kind of like, tabloid it and things of that nature. He knows you. You grew up together literally, and he knew that you would take care of it. So I think that has a different dynamic than say someone, a perfect stranger, say he had an interview with. It's a whole different.
But I didn't know him growing up. I just went to that one party. I never had anything to do with the guy. But one person who was extremely surprising about opening up was Kathy Hart. Remember, she used to be part of the popular morning show. Mm-hmm. And I said to her, don't worry, okay, so there's certain things she couldn't talk about because of legal situations.
Right.
And she's like, I only have this much time. First of all, she's a wonderful person. Never met her before. The last part of that interview, people should check it out. Kathy Hart. The last part of the interview was gold. Because she talked about her faith. She went where I never thought she'd go. Okay. Now another thing is, because I'm actually interested in people and I'm not out for myself. Okay. So I don't put out that vibe. It's all about me. But also I think the other key is, I think you have to just you have to have a basic respect of people, like of human beings. There are people who are flawed. There are people, like there are certain people who said, why are you going to talk to so-and-so? I'm like, I don't, who cares if they had this? Who cares what happened? So I think you have to have a very basic respect of people. And also, I think also because I helped my parents for so many years, because they were old and they were sick, you just learn how to like stay in the moment with people. And I think they can feel that. It's hard to meet people who stay in the moment with you.
No, you're right, because those moments really don't happen. But I guess depending on who you vibe with and who you connect with. And when you say go back to your background with your parents, and then when you say before about loving people, and then going back to Rafer real quick, Okay, so
Yeah.
even though you didn't know him that well, there was some form of trust
Right.
that had happened for him to go into that. And like, I'm going to go at, once again, give me the link. I'll check out the not Kevin, I'm sorry, Kathy Hart interview, because
Oh
that
my
was huge
gosh.
during
That
that
was
time.
huge.
That was a big time. And just to give a quick synopsis, there was some sexual harassment going on at this radio station called The Mix. And Kathy Hart was a part of this great morning team for years. And she decided to leave. And pretty much, when you look at the dynamics of people in power,
Yeah.
and when people in power, they 9 out of 10 times abuse it. And
Yeah.
so when you abuse it, it's kind of hard to go back from that, especially when other people who have worked with this person have a similar or same story. So everybody can't be lying to a
Right.
degree. So when someone like her, who's been on the pathing out of great radio and great numbers and the morning team and everything else, tells you and spills out of what's inside of her, again, trust and comfort. And so once again, she didn't just tell anybody, she told you. And that's a special moment. You said it's gold. It is gold, it is
Oh my
platinum.
gosh.
And you cherish that. You really do.
Well, another thing is I think it's also because I've been teaching for many years. Okay, so when I was younger, when I started teaching, I was an idiot. That's the thing about it's the only profession where you can improve with age, because other professions they start discriminating against people above like 40 or whatever. So it's like if I wanted a corporate job, I'm sure they wouldn't want to hire me because I'm not 25 or whatever. But the thing is with teaching, so what you do is you learn over the years, especially if you teach in Chicago, because you interact with so many different. I mean, I've had, like, I subbed for a GED class. This girl she was emancipated from her parents. People live in their cars. People are in the hood. They hear, like, I had this one student in this English class I taught earlier this year. He lives on the South Side, and or he used to live on the South Side, and his neighbor was literally, some of his neighbors were literally murdered right next door because they were part of a gang, etc.
Right.
Okay, so, but then you hear all this stuff, and then you're like, okay, I'm not gonna just, you hear all this stuff and you don't judge it, you know what I mean? Because these are people's
Correct.
experiences and pain and so forth. And then you just sort of get in that habit of zipping a lip or anything that, like, there's certain things that in society that people say, they have societal theories about stuff. And then you meet people and you zip your lip, you don't throw out a societal theory, you just hear what they're saying, and you may disagree with them, but it's their experience. So who are you to disagree with their experience? So you just get in this habit. Because now I've been teaching immigrants for in Chicago, like, for more than 15 years. So I'm so used to hearing these crazy, these stories. I mean, yeah, it's so you just sort of like put aside your preconceptions. You get used to that. So then when I interview people for podcasts, I just try to do a similar thing.
So when you have your earbuds on or you're watching TV or both, who do you like, radio, TV, or otherwise, that are also interviewers, and you say, you know what, I really like him or her. I like
Dick
this style.
Cavett.
Oh my God.
No, I didn't know who, like, I knew who he was, but I never watched him because my sister loved him. And then what happened was, now they started putting this stuff online, and then we used to have access to this TV show, to this TV station on cable where they played his old stuff. Oh my gosh. And that's when I thought, I said, I would love to do his job. I said, no, I can't. I can do a live stream. I just won't be paid. Yes, he is so good. He was really good. And also this fictional character named Jiminy Glick, who's a creation of
Martin Short.
Yeah, Martin Short. Everybody look up Jiminy Glick. I watched all his stuff like twice. It's hilarious. But yeah, Dick Cavett was good. I wish I could get paid to do something like Dick Cavett, because he interviewed all these people and they'd be hanging around, and like Janis Joplin, like, you get all these stories out of her. People would come back. It's very intelligent. I mean, those are the people who stand out. Jiminy Glick and the other, and I think Terry Gross. Well, Terry Gross is good online, but then somebody told me it's not like all in the moment, so whatever.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, those are the people that stand out.
You mentioned about Dick Cavett. I think the interviews I like with him, well, obviously John Lennon, when he was on there. Yeah, all these eclectic people, Jim Brown would be on there. The interviews he did with Groucho Marx are through the roof. Yeah. Through the roof. And Dick Cavett used to be a writer for Johnny Carson at one point, before he started getting to his own thing, and really became his own man. A lot of people understand, like, for example, there was a time between the Tonight Show when Jack Parr, the second host, was leaving after 5 years, and Johnny Carson was about to take over. There was a 9-month gap before Carson took over because Carson was signed at CBS for a game show. So he had to wait till his contract was out. In those 9 months, a lot of guys got on there and filled in and made names for themselves. Cavett, Merv Griffin, and others who were able to pretty much audition for their future shows. And Dick Cavett is so uniquely unusual. I mean, he has that kind of like I'm smarter than you type of wit, but I can put my arm around you and just say, look, it's wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Right.
And that's the great thing about Cavett. I can listen to Cavett all day long.
Well, yeah, he's got a charm about him, but well, first of all, he shows his intelligence, but he also shows his grace towards his guests. And
Yes.
so, and he also knows how to really interview. But wait, there's something else you were talking about. Oh yeah, I was gonna say that I understand, like, now when, you know, on these late shows, people interview people, and it's always like for the sound bite. So what they do is they take it and then they take a 30-second thing and then they throw it up online. And I know, like, a lot of people like Joe Rogan. Because see, Joe Rogan's another. I mean, I like. I don't know. I don't follow him, but I mean, I've heard some of his stuff, like bits and pieces. But because some of the stuff is like, dude, why are you going down this road? I mean, but the thing is that he's also very, like, privileged. I don't mean like spoiled, but he's really lucky because he gets paid a ton of money to just, like, sit in his studio and talk to people at length. But I know he's not the only one. There are other people too, like Mark Maron. He's one of the original greats, and you know, for really, you know, getting people. But there are some people, okay, this is the thing, is so some of these people, you can tell they're interested in the people they're interviewing, but some people are interested in themselves and they're interviewing other people to make themselves shine. And it's like it's because, you know, people work because we all live in this kind of self-promoting, typical American culture kind of thing where people they want to boost themselves up, and the person they're interviewing is a kind of vehicle for it. Yeah. And I can sort of see through it, so I don't want to sit through that. That's not everybody, it's just some people. So
no, you're right about that. So the time going into your interview and the people you mentioned that you like, say like a Dick Cavett and then a Jiminy Glick character that Martin Short created, is there something about, again, you mentioned about Cavett's grace and intelligence. Are there certain interviews that Cavett, for example, has done and just say, man, that's like one of the best I've ever seen and heard?
I don't know. I've seen so many. I can't think. I mean, I know Janis Joplin stands out. Yeah, Groucho Marx is good. But I know there's so many. I mean, sometimes the guests are sort of like phony. Like the way they're acting, you can tell they've got that veneer going, and he can't crack through it. But yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything. I'm not one of these people that retains so many details, but I just think that people should look at his body of work and they'll see what I'm talking about.
You also penned the book, Wicker Park Wishes. Tell us about that, please.
Oh yeah, here's the book, Wicker Park
Wishes. Yeah, promote. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, it's okay. Wicker Park Wishes. It's about this, you know, young woman who's slumming it. She's from like the North Shore. You know, let's say the equivalent of Kenilworth. I don't say it, but it's like equivalent of Kenilworth. She's slumming it. It's 1994, and she's living in Wicker Park and having a crazy time and partying. And she's basically trying to find herself. But what it is that it's a document of, it's 1994 Chicago, because a lot of neighborhoods, see, people always think the North Side's like this really rich place, and it's always been like that, but it hasn't been. So there are a lot of areas that were not as nice. And I used to hang out over there, and there were just some people like, okay, the most famous person who did this kind of thing was Liz Phair, the singer. And this is not Liz Phair. This is not a novelization of Liz Phair, but it's that idea where somebody's from the North Shore, they're going to Wicker Park, they're living a very different kind of lifestyle. And also, I don't know if you remember this, but there also used to be these clubs around the city that used to play house music and all these different, it was like more organic than it is now. Like now what you do is you pay money to go into a room and watch a DJ, you know, plug and play basically. And all these people are standing around. But back then there was more of a DJ culture. So it's basically a story about this crazy girl who just goes through all these things. She's working downtown and stuff. And it's also the early days of the internet. So I'm trying to capture that insanity. All the early days of the internet, people had to call each other. they couldn't text each other, things like that. So it's about her journey.
Now, what inspired you to write the book? I mean, based upon your own experiences?
Yeah, no, I'm not the girl that she's not.
I'm not saying you're
yeah.
not the girl, right? I'm not saying
Yeah.
that.
Yes, it's based on my experience. So what happened was, and actually I finished it during COVID because, well, what happened was my life is very boring. It's pretty boring. Okay. I don't have like this crazy life or anything. I don't like my social life's not that great. So what happened was several years ago, I started this fake blog. So I've got a real blog at it's at Metrolingua. It's called Metrolingua. And then I started this fake blog, and it's about this chick who's like 23 and she's living in maybe Wicker Park, but the current day 21st century. And I started like writing about these crazy things that she's going through. And then I was in this writing group and I thought, oh my gosh, I should just turn this kind of blog into a book, but set it back in 1994 before especially the North Side changed so much.
Yes.
And so it really came from the fake blog, and I still have the fake blog, and I started another fake blog. And so what I'll do is like, if I have some kind of boring day, but I hear some crazy stuff going on, I'll just like go on the blog and make up some blog post about this girl going out with her friends or her boyfriend's giving her a hard time and stuff like that. So it's like my alter ego.
Right. I can see that. I mean, you kept the word out of my mouth about an alter ego thing. I think in order for us to survive to a degree, like you said before, boring lives, I completely understand with that. But at the same time, if you're able to create an avenue and lane that is exciting, then you have the best of both worlds. It's like, splitting yourself. It's kind of like, doing like the Batman thing. You're doing the Batman Bruce Wayne thing, and you're going through both at the same time. And again, that's cool because, you sit back, you twiddle your thumbs, and you knit your needles, and you're watching TV, and you're like, the only thing missing is a shawl and a rocking chair. You don't want to get that far yet. But if you create something, and once again, being a creative mind, you create something that keeps you entertained.
Exactly. And it also gives you an outlet. So for instance, like, okay, I walk around like I'm addicted to walking around the city. And I'll hear these conversations that are so strange. Like I think this girlfriend and boyfriend, they were arguing about like she goes out too much and she shouldn't go out, and why does she sleep in and she shouldn't drink. And I thought, yeah, okay. And they're not my friends, but I went back. Now, I don't copy what people say. I just use it as a launching. But you're right, because what happens is I can still keep my act together in real life, but then I've got this other thing. But the thing is, when I wrote this book, okay, Wicker Park Wishes, what happened was I actually, somebody interviewed me and I explained this in writing. What happened was, because it wasn't just a fake blog anymore, I was trying to get into this character. I had like split personality. I felt crazy. And I really felt like I was being split in two. I had my nerdy, boring self in real life, and then I had this crazy person on paper. And at the same time, I was also listening to crazy music that captured like Stupid Girls one by Garbage, and then Tuvlo's song. I would like listen to them again and again and again. And then I would get into the character, and then I'd be crazy. And then I go to work, like at the radio station. I remember I told this one guy, I don't know if he's living in Chicago anymore, but I just tell him like, I feel like I don't feel too good, because like, who am I?
Yeah.
So that's like acting. I think actors go through that. So it was sort of like I was acting, but I was writing the book.
Man, that's deep. If you were, say, not being an interviewer and a live streamer and podcast editor, what other profession you think you'd be in?
Well, no, I am in another profession. I teach immigrants. Like that's my thing.
Right, you mentioned about that. But what if you weren't doing that? It was a whole different.
Oh, no. Okay, none of that.
Right.
Okay, so nothing I'm doing now. I would be an accountant in a firm and just be like being very normal and just living in Naperville or whatever. I mean, I would be a successful corporate person. But if I try to go that way, I can't get hired. I think because I'm too weird, I'm too old. I don't know what it is, but or maybe God doesn't want me to go that way. So because if I try to go that way, it doesn't really happen. So I'd love to be just like a normal person who's just crushing it quietly in a corporation.
If somebody wanted to follow your lead and be an interviewer and a podcaster and live streamer, what advice would you give them?
Okay, well, start doing it. Well, first you have to think, you got to go for the long game, because some people will somebody, okay, we were talking about radio, how it's messed up. Okay. Like, I think not a lot of people have helped me out. Like, some people have, and they know who they are. Thank you, those people. I will never forget it. Thank you. I owe you a lot. But a lot of times I didn't have that. So usually what happens in the media or some creative field is somebody higher up on the ladder pulls you up. So you hook up with somebody, they like you, they're your mentor or whatever, and then they pull you along and they say, hey, I'm gonna hook you up with all this stuff. Like this successful music guy I met yesterday. He said that he hit it big with this one. He produced this song, or he represented these people, and it went big, and then it just led to other stuff. He's like, he works with A-list people now. But I think you have to be committed to what you're doing, and it has to be within you. It has to, you have to, like, I'm very motivated because I really like people and I love interviewing. So you could like, I could never have to walk again and I would still do it because it's within me. So you have to think, why are you doing this? Are you doing this to impress people? Are you doing this to become somebody else? Are you doing this to try to get a better gig? You have to be committed to it, anything creative. And then you have to find some people who are sort of like-minded and meet with them once in a while. You also should be accountable in some way, like set your goals, talk to people. Like I know this guy, John Suntress, he's a Blockbuster, a podcaster. It's called Word Balloon. He is one of the best interviews I've seen. And sometimes I talk to him like on the phone for like 2 hours. Like, hey man, what are you doing? Oh, I'm doing this. And it just sort of gets me motivated. Sometimes I go to these, I'm in the WGA Writers Guild. So sometimes I'll go to these things online. People are talking about their stuff that they're working on. And I'm also in a writing group online. So people will talk about stuff. So you got to get those people to motivate you. Because otherwise, because when I first started doing podcasting, I didn't have other people to really talk to. And it was very hard. And at one point I wanted to quit. So you really should find the inspiration sometime. And just find also with social media, just find your platform and just do it. And make sure that you have a lot of ideas that it's okay to change, but make sure that you have a series of ideas or a series of people you want to talk to, or a series of content, because some people they're doing their own content and they're being innovative. Just make sure that it's more than just one thing. So like artists, like there are people who love to do art who are working in banks, but they've got their sketchbooks and stuff, right, and they'll never give it up. So.
Well, I'm telling you, that's good advice to give, and people should heed to it, because Margaret knows what she's doing, and once again, being a creative, like I said before, nothing wrong with having like-minded people around you. I think that keeps you going. It keeps you motivated. It keeps your creative juices flowing. And again, when you're around negativity, you can feel that. You don't need that.
Don't be around negativity. Well, and also another thing is admit to yourself you are creative, because I'm married to my husband's very creative. Okay, he's a graphic artist, but that's his thing. I mean, he'll never not be creative. But for some reason, I was in denial, like, oh no, I'm not creative. But yeah, I'll just admit that you're creative. I think it's because we don't live in LA, because LA is filled with creative people, or New York. Okay. We live in Chicago. It's like it's not necessarily the most creative place. It's very functional, very practical. But, just first of all, admit to yourself you are creative. Admit to yourself you love to do whatever. It could be like manga or whatever. Just be real with yourself and then pursue it. Like, I like to do content. I'm not into like the brash kind of publicity, but I like what I like. Yeah. So if you think, like a lot of times I was like sort of paranoid that people thought I was weird, but I think I am sort of weird. I mean,
you embrace
and that's okay. You know what I mean?
You embrace that. Yeah, absolutely. Nothing wrong. That's what makes you unique. I mean, who the hell want to be like everybody else? You want to be your true, authentic self. So once you embrace that, it's before about embracing yourself, being a creator, embrace your idiosyncrasies, scars and all. Once you embrace that, everything else falls into place. So no, that's good advice.
But the thing is, like, the problem is that you do want to fit in, because for a long time I was sort of suppressing it because I thought, I don't want to be alone. See, because the thing is that, especially if you're in a okay, look, this is the thing. This is sort of a myth about American culture sometimes, is American culture will say you can be who you are, but that's not necessarily true, because you can be ostracized. Like, so for instance, if you don't buy into a certain kind of political view, like other people who are like you, they think a certain way, but you don't really think like them. And then they're sort of bothered by that. Then you're ostracized. Or if you really are an individualistic kind of person and you're unique, but then the other people, their uniqueness is more a style that's trendy, then that could, so that's why I think that's why a lot of people they don't admit it to themselves. Especially in Chicago, I think there's a lot of conformity. What do you think?
Not go along with that. It's a lot of formatics that go into it as well. So if you're not here, you're there. You're not there, you're somewhere else. And again, if you are who you say you are, you tap into your own originality. Yeah, it can scare people because you're not like them. You're not, in the same mindset as them. And then you become strange, and you become weird, and you become, wait a minute, they're not a part of what we're trying to do here. So it is a catch-22. Me, myself, personally, you try to fit in. But if it's not for me, then I can't do it. I can't fake the funk. I've tried it.
Fake the fun. Like, what do you mean, like fake the fun?
Fake the funk is, for me, trying to be somebody I'm not. So, for example, working in corporate radio, yes, everybody has a certain tote that line type of mentality, and it just wasn't for me. I'm not an ass kisser. I'm not.
Yeah.
I just not in my mindset to do. Let my work speak for itself. Both my parents worked. My mom was a school principal. I come from a certain area where your work speaks for itself. So that's the mindset I have. Let my work speak for itself, and hopefully my work will get me to advance.
Yeah.
But once again, if you did not come from that mindset, you don't care. As long as you bring your cousin in,
Yeah.
you've been in the building sometimes where it's a lot of who you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of who you know, man, I hate to say who you blow. A lot of people blowing each other all these time, and they don't want to look into other people because they have their own group of people that they want to bring in and make them great and push them. They probably have the, I don't know, a talent of a gnat, but because they have somebody behind them, that's where the qualities come in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because because I was talking to somebody and they were saying, "Oh, it's really too bad that you can't." Okay, like I obviously have this passion to do certain stuff, and I try to get along with people, but then people have agendas. I don't want to get into the details, but
I understand.
people understand, and but I don't want to become one of those people, and so I can be like pushed out or ostracized or whatever. But I know I do the right thing. I mean, and at the end of the day, I'm doing what I should. But the thing is that the good thing, especially about our country, like the good thing about our country is there's so many variables because you can you might be out, but you can go somewhere else and be in.
True.
Or you can go online. We've got a lot of freedom online. So that's what I really like about our culture because I've been to a lot of countries and I lived abroad. So I really like how there's so many options. And I think that's the thing is that I think that a lot of people should embrace the possibilities. Okay, that's the thing. It's like you and I have gone through stuff. I think I met you once. Like, were you ever at Ken Smith's party?
Yes. Ken and I go back to college together and high school.
Okay, he invited me to his party once. I don't know why. Like, I guess I wasn't a good guest or something, but I may have met you there once. Okay, but I went there once. But anyway, I was gonna say that the good thing. Okay, first, let's say you go through the. This is the advice I have for people. Let's say you go through the stuff, which I've been through a lot of stuff. Okay, yes, you go through the pain. Okay, you have to experience the pain. You have to experience the sadness, but then you come out the other side, and then you think, okay, I can integrate it, not become bitter, but I can take it, make better decisions, and actually value the good people. Like get rid of the excess. Just be like, no, I know those people are not a good road. I'm going to go this other way. And then you can find what you're doing. And I think the great thing about doing online, the great thing about digital is that we can find our way and we can use our voice and we can do what we want to. And we can go to bed and know that we were authentic and we were adding to the culture in some way that's positive.
And we were not put into a box.
Right, because I remember many years ago, this is many years ago, when I first moved to the city, and I met somebody, and she's like, I just can't figure you out. And I said, yeah, that's the point. Like, I know you're trying to figure me out, but don't try to define me because you can't put me in a box. That's why sometimes when I meet people who are like this guy I met last night, he seemed pretty cool. But when I meet certain people, you could tell they've been around a lot of places because they don't have preconceptions and they're sort of like meeting you as a human. Like sometimes people just say certain things to you, especially in academia, because academia has like a lot of bizarre theories and people will be like, okay, you're like this and that. And sometimes I say to people, you're not respecting my humanity. Why don't you just like put aside your preconceptions and just respect my humanity? And let's start there. Okay. Because I think like you're too educated for your own good or something, you know? So
Yeah, you got certain eggheads got to be careful because it's hard to talk to them because again, you said there's certain people in academia. There's an old quote about being able to walk with kings and queens and still have the common touch, and not
oh,
everybody
that's
can do that. That's sometimes a nice tightrope to walk in the middle. If you're able to do the balancing act, you're good. Some people can't do it, so that would make sense.
well, that's also why some people they're in Hollywood or whatever, and everybody loves them because they still maintain that. Like, yes, they have the power and the wealth, but then they have the common touch and doors open like in a quiet way. The other people have
Right.
to sort of push their way with all their security or something and make their mark. But I think yeah, that's true. I mean, I've never been in that situation where I'm still like below power. I really don't care. But
Mhm.
maybe I always think like if I ever do get to a higher level in society, I'll never, I don't think I'm one of those people that would abuse it, but I do appreciate those kinds of people that are cool like that.
Absolutely. Margaret, this has been more than great. Last question I have for you. If you can invite 4 people to dinner, alive or not, who would they be and why?
Okay. Well, I'm tempted to say biblical people, but then we can just look in the scripture and I'd be afraid because then they'd tell me like I'm messing up. So I wouldn't want to, I'd be scared, like if
Right.
Jesus were to come, he'd be like, okay, okay, let's see. Okay, the guy, this is like obscure. The guy who plays Tuvok, Tim Russ. Hello, Tim Russ, if you're out there. Tim Russ from Voyager, the guy who plays Tuvok. I would love to meet that guy because he's one of my favorite actors,
Mhm.
and he's very good. Another guy I want to meet is but he probably wouldn't be too nice. Is this incredible DJ producer, Dead Mouse. His real name is Joel Zimmerman. He lives in Canada, and I don't know. I've heard mixed things. I don't know anybody who's met him, but he's one of the best musical minds of our century, and I'd love to just talk to him about I watched like his videos and stuff. I'd love to talk to him about his process.
Mhm.
And well, my grandfather, who died many years, he died when I was a kid, but he was very sophisticated, and he was very sophisticated, very educated. He was trilingual, et cetera. I'd like to
Mhm.
talk to him about more stuff because I didn't know him that long. And another person, I don't
Yes.
know, maybe I don't know, I know one of those people that you talked about, like somebody who's a king or queen who's got the common touch, because I want to know about their journey and then find out what it's like to have that kind of power and wealth, because I haven't met those kinds of people. So
Very cool indeed. Margaret Larkin, thank you for being here on CBI. For more information about you, where can people find you at?
okay, I'm all over the internet. Just go to margaretlarkin.com. You can also I'm on social media at Metro Lingua, because that's the name of I have a business called Metro Lingua. And you can also, I'm on Facebook, Twitter. I like Twitter and Instagram, etc. I mean, I'm all over. So, but
This has been more
margaretlarkin.com, that's a good place to start.
very cool indeed. MargaretLarkin.com. Margaret Larkin, thank you for so much for being here. Continue to do what you do. You have a great creative mind, and we need to hear more of it through your work. Thank you so much. Do me a favor, hang on, okay?
Okay.
All right, Margaret Larkin, fantastic. I'm glad to have her on because she's looking through. I've seen her work before, and again, like I said before, I was like, I gotta have her on because again, as a fellow interviewer, you want to see what other person does that what makes them tick. And so I've learned a lot. Hope you've learned a lot too. Well, thank you, Margaret, for being here. We'll get a chance to come back soon. And for those of you who checked us out, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here. And we congregate every Wednesday when we pop up. That'll be at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, at 2 p.m. on the West Coast. So again, have a good evening where you are. Continue to have a good day. Once again, thank you for being here. And so we will recongregate on Saturday morning for Baseline. And that's at 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central. The West Coast people continue to snore and call hogs. It's too early to watch this program. We understand about sleep. If I wasn't doing the show Saturday morning, I'd be sleeping my damn self. So I completely understand. You want to stay asleep and check out the replay. We appreciate that. We accept all people here, especially people who need sleep, like myself. So for those of you who may not know how Baseline is operated, here's a coming up follow-up statement about that after I do my close. Continue to be safe, continue to be sound, continue to be healthy, and most importantly, above anything else, continue to be loved. Long live the peace, long live the funk, more power to you, and be kind.
Join the transporter to Hades.
Your butt and gut becomes one.
Join the reformer of hooker whores.
This is my daughter, Placenta Booty Johnson.
Join the bronze god.
Whenever you are in distress, take off your baseball cap and throw it in the air.
Join your very own superhero of broadcasting, Chris Bass.
So whatever color crayon they get, they palm it and do 2 circles, and that translates to, I can be the black people.
As she takes you through the week's paces in Baseline. Live every Saturday at 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central, Pacific time zone people, just stay asleep when this is on live and just catch the recording. Oh, I'm sorry. Exclusively on the Chris Bass YouTube channel.